up, Laura? How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us here on MMA Junkie Radio. Happy to have you. Lots to talk about. Let's start with the most recent in your career, Wimp to Warrior. That's awesome. Like, we have a buddy who was part of Wimp to Warrior. We do
Really?
Yeah, we do another show with him. He's our co-host on another show, Triple G show with Richard Hunter. So he's kind of talked about that journey. He's done 2 of them actually, and we're very familiar with it.
That is so cool. I need to get I want to hear his story, and I want to hear his firsthand thoughts of what the experience was like. I mean, I think what made me so excited about being involved with them in the first place was that it was so reminiscent of my own journey into MMA, and kind of somewhat accidental. It's not like I grew up thinking I was some elite athlete, which I'm still not. So, I never really thought of myself as a fighter, and it wasn't until I started training that feeling just kind of grew inside me. And at some point I just had to get it out. So I feel like that's a lot of it. There are a lot of similarities between my own story and the story of people who go through that program. But I want to get in touch. And that's part of my plan in these early days of working there, is to I want to hear the boots on the ground stories. We've already had some incredible ones. As I'm sure you know, the program is already pretty ubiquitous in Australia and New Zealand. And man, some of the stories coming out of those countries are absolutely just incredible. A woman losing over 150 pounds. She did several of them in a row. Another woman who had experienced a lot of sexual trauma early in her life, and it was kind of bubbling up to the surface to the point where she wasn't able to be intimate with her husband. And through the Wimp to Warrior program and training jujitsu and being put in situations where she had to be physically close to, men, it really rehabilitated her, and, it saved her marriage and completely changed her life. So like, those are the things that get me excited about this program, because I know how life-changing MMA can be. I know you guys know that as well. So I want everyone to know, and that's really what I'm here to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll definitely put you in touch with him. He did do two camps and fights. And, he, like I said, he's a co-host of ours, so he's great at talking and explaining. He's a comedian too, so hopefully
I know Richard. Yeah, I know Richard. I just didn't know he did the program.
Okay.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So Richard Hunter with Frank Mir, they do the Phone Booth Fighting podcast. Yeah, cool. Well, that's great to see you there, but geez, there's only 7 days in the week, and you're all over the place again with all these promotions. How do you balance that? And does it always start with UFC's priority, and then whatever weekends are free, you fill them up from there?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. I just keep thinking that if I add enough stuff, someone will invent a new day of the week, right? Like, maybe if I just force them if I show the need for another day of the week. No, that's how I approach it. And it's kind of how I have to approach it. It's also how I want to approach it. I mean, the UFC work is definitely the cornerstone of everything I do. And frankly, it's why I'm in a position to be doing those other things. So it's only appropriate that they get first pick of my time. And then from there, when I have weekends that are open, I'm anxious to hop in the LFA booth. They've been kind enough to kind of say, hey, we love you here. You're awesome. You pick any weekend you want. And as a third person, it works really well for me because I can kind of fit in wherever it makes sense to do that with them. So I can kind of pick and choose a little bit there. Got one coming up in a couple weeks. And then Wimp to Warrior, the ambassador role, lucky for me. And that was the first thing I said to them. I said, listen, I love this company, this idea, this concept so much. I'm going to want to jump in, into every regard that I can. But the reality is I have a very busy schedule. And they said, listen, we get that. That's why we want you. We want your presence in the industry. So they've been great about it. And I'm just going to make it happen, guys. just gonna make it work somehow.
Will you be at Invicta this weekend or UFC? Because I know or both, because Invicta has a big card with 2 title fights on Friday, and of course UFC's got a banger of a fight with Garbrandt and Rob Font on Saturday. Actually,
neither. For once, I have a weekend off, and I am so excited about that for my own personal life reasons. I'm super pumped for Invicta. My relationship with them probably changes a little bit, them not being on Fight Pass anymore, and UFC kind of being protective of UFC and UFC properties. So that relationship might look different moving forward. To be honest, the specifics of that haven't been discussed, but I will tell you that when I saw that news, I was more excited than anybody for Shannon, the organization, and I genuinely hope that this move to Access TV is nothing but great things for them. I still have so many friends over there that I communicate with, and I'm going to be watching, of course.
Yeah, well, they have 2 title fights for those that want to know. They are on Access TV, and they're streaming on all their social media. You can go to InvictaFC.com for info on Facebook and YouTube. I think YouTube's probably the best bet there. That's what they've been promoting heavily, but they're streaming all over the world, folks. Invicta Fights, it's been around for about a decade now. Very, very popular. You'll fall in love with it right away. The ladies bring it, and boy, do they have a list of quality alumni. A lot of the alumni you see, a lot of the women that you see fighting in the UFC and Bellator and basically all over the world, a lot of them are Invicta alumni, so you should definitely check it out. All right, so you have a free weekend. What are you doing? Watching fights, or do you just unplug altogether from MMA this weekend?
Man, I can't. It's in my blood. It's in my blood. So whenever there are UFC fights, I'm absolutely watching. So yeah, those always take up my Saturday night, whether I'm on the road with them or I'm just at home. But man, it's so nice to be able to watch as a fan sometimes, be able to sit back and be in my sweatpants on my couch rather than in heels clacking around the arena trying to, get various interviews and whatnot. So it's a much more relaxing way to enjoy the fights. But man, we've got some really good fights this weekend, and I will be with my family and chilling. And I've got, I guess, 2 weeks like that, and then I'm commentating for LFA. And then, man, the summer schedule really picks out for me as Contender Series rolls out, and we've got some big pay-per-views coming up. So this is really just kind of the quiet before the storm of the next few months.
Let's dive into a little bit more with LFA. So that's been about 6 months now, and that's been tremendous. I remember Go asking you the question about, you're doing great at Dana White Contender Series, but what are your thoughts on? And sure enough, it happened. So fist bump to Go. No, I'm just kidding. You did it. You got yourself in that position.
No, you guys helped. You guys for sure helped. And I have to say that. And I'm glad you brought that up because, it's not something I'm going to sit around and project myself. So it was awesome of you to ask the question the way that you did and allow me to kind of give my thoughts there. And I definitely think that the subsequent video and articles that came out afterwards were definitely helpful in making that happen for me. So I appreciate you guys very much kind of, leading the charge there.
You deserved it. I mean, it was something that we all saw, and we're just the guys that pointed it out. But it's something that I think everybody felt like you're just a natural at everything you do, and just your ability to help the sport.
You haven't seen me try to play baseball or basketball. You would take that back. You haven't seen me try to play baseball or basketball. You would take that bat in a heartbeat. I'm not a natural at everything.
No. You can't hit one?
Any sport involving a ball is just, it's
Can you break 100 in bowling at least?
Yeah, but barely.
I got some buddies that can't, and I'm like, how can you at least not just throw the damn thing and hit enough pins that it adds up to 100?
Yeah, I can break 100 in bowling, but it's not pretty. And that involves a fair amount of luck.
I got some buddies asking me to golf, and I haven't golfed in 25, maybe 30 years, and I'm like, I don't know, guys, but they're like, come on. And I had always told my friends, as long as I can play other sports, I used to play a lot of men's softball and shoot hoops, anything, throw the football around. As long as I can do that, I'm not golfing until I turn 50. I turned 50 a few years ago, and they're calling me on it, so we'll see.
Don't do it.
I've heard it's great. I have no desire whatsoever. We, on this new weigh-in show that we have where I'm excited to finally be an analyst, not the host. It's fun because they're constantly having us do these wacky games, but they always seem to pick ones that the other guys are good at, like Dan Helly, a ringer in cornhole. They picked golf, DC's main pastime, and I keep telling them, guys, we need to have a horseback riding competition or something that your girl can do, because these stick and ball sports, not happening.
So I was looking something up real fast since you touched on it. I saw you and Anthony Smith are doing a show, and then I did see, going through the social media. Is that where you guys are passing around a belt? Is that what you referenced a second ago? You and John Anik?
Yes.
And what the hell? What game is that? I couldn't figure it out, and I ran out of time. I'm sorry.
Okay. So the UFC has a new weigh-in show, and it is, I'm telling you, I'm not just saying this because I'm on it. It is the funniest thing you've ever seen in your life. It's a much more laid back, loose show that we do during the official weigh-in window. So it's a 2.5 hour long show because we talk and hang out and do things during the entire 9 to 11 a.m. window, whatever that is local time. So whatever city we're in, the show is on 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And it is so much fun. It's typically Dan Hellie is hosting, Daniel Cormier, myself, and then a guest analyst. We've had D. Thomas a couple times. We had Michael Chiesa. We had Aljamain Sterling. And they make us compete against each other. And they put the UFC belt on the line. And what happened with Anik, the thing that you're referencing, is it was before the draft. So they thought, oh, we'll have our own UFC draft. But the problem was I had won prior to that show. So I was the incoming champion, and they made me pick last every single draft round. But we were drafting one fighter from every weight class other than women's featherweight. And obviously once a fighter was taken, you couldn't take them again. So hold on, sorry, my computer is trying to do something funny to me right now. I apologize. So at the end of they had a guest judge pick who had the best draft class. And that judge, we didn't know who the judge was. The judge didn't know that I had to be picked, or that I had to go last every round. So I had a major disadvantage. Anyway, I won, but then they didn't like that I won. So they turned it into a Twitter poll, which of course DC is going to decimate anybody in a Twitter poll if you turn it into a popularity contest. So there's definitely some running rivalry between DC and myself because he stole the belt from me. I stole it back. It's just an ongoing thing. It's a great show. It's a lot of fun.
You draft the fighters, but what happens with them? Like the ones that are fighting that weekend, or
no?
The
entire UFC roster, and there were four of us, and so we would just go down the line. And like I said, I had to go last every round, and you could just pick and you had to have one fighter from every weight class.
Right.
But the fighter, once it got taken by someone else, you couldn't, of course, pick them again. So immediately out the gate, I think Dean Thomas picked Amanda Nunes, who she would have been my number one pick. And then I picked Francis Ngannou, and someone else picked John Jones. So you see, I immediately have a heavyweight. So now I have to look for the best fighters in other weight classes. It's the strategy of the part of the strategy was in the less deep weight classes, like women's flyweight, for instance. You got the top two, and then it kind of, the rest are a little bit more, there's more parity between them. So, some strategy involved. I did a great job. And they took it away from me.
In football, you grab the first couple, and then it's like, I'll address that later.
Best available. Yeah.
And then some judge just says who's is the best, and that guy or gal wins the belt.
Yeah, and that judge was John Anik, and John Anik picked me, and then the producers, I think, didn't agree with him, and DC didn't agree with him. And so they turned it into, never mind, we're going to open this up to the fans. We're going to turn it into a Twitter poll. And so, of course, DC won that, but it's all right.
DC is ultra competitive. Remember when we were interviewing him while he was doing Mike Tyson in our studio? And, he would deflect a question because somebody would knock him down in Mike Tyson and he needed to win. And then he'd say, what was the question?
Yeah. Oh, he's a major cheater, and I love him for it. It's great.
Hey, by the way, I have the biggest beef with your coffee cup. Okay, I used to get those. I love those. But here's what happens. The reason I pick them out is because they look way bigger than all the other ones. Okay, but if you look at the bottom, they hollow it out, and they're
yeah, they do.
What are they doing?
But you have to make sure to get the 16-ounce ones. They make them in different sizes. This is the big one. Yeah, I have tiny hands, but this is a big one.
I would measure it, and I was using the same amount of coffee, and I was like, "What the fuck?" And then I looked at the cup.
I pictured you in the grocery store with like a little tape measure.
Hey, I have an idea for your draft. Okay.
Wait, it's already done. But tell me.
No, but this is different. So we used to do this. We did this with Ricardo Lamas one time and another fighter, and what we did was we created events like an Olympics. Okay, so picture you got to do the 4x4 relay, right? Tug of war. We were doing a little Revenge of the Nerds. everything. So we came up with like 6 different events, archery or gun shooting. And then you had to pick your fighters, but each fighter had to compete in 2 events. So it's not like you could just stack up on heavyweights because they're probably not going to run fast in the relay.
Yes.
And from there, you had to actually do strategy. And so you guys should do those.
I love that idea. Can I just pick Valentina Shevchenko for everything?
She's on my team. Yeah, because she can do the shooting.
She's fast. I feel like she could probably throw stuff really far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think at the time Ray Borg was still in the UFC, so he was on my archery team, and because he's all into that. But yeah, Valentina was on the shooting team. It was fun. That's great that you guys are having a blast like that. And I see a lot of pre-fight shows, a lot of podcasts, a lot of watch-alongs. MMA really, really took a big step during the pandemic because we were the first sport to come back. Yeah. And I think we have a ton of fans. Have you been feeling the same?
Oh, totally. And I think it's reflected in the betting lines too. The other thing I do, the quick hits for the UFC, I do an interview every week, or every pay-per-view, I should say, with Yanni the Greek. And it's been interesting hearing him talk about the influx of newer fans and more casual fans into the betting lines, and how that kind of can affect things with the big pay-per-view cards. It's pretty fascinating stuff. And I definitely feel like there is a whole new crop of people that were introduced to the UFC because we were the first ones back. And then again, the first ones back in terms of, having a sold out indoor event, which was awesome to be there in Jacksonville as well. It's been cool to see things kind of creep back to normal. And here in Kansas City, no masks. My kid's been in school all year round, but the last few weeks hasn't had to wear a mask, and it's awesome to see things return to normal.
I want to ask you another question about Wimp to Warrior.
Yeah.
So you're not the only addition that they've made. They've been trying to, they've made the staff a little bit bigger, but the format itself, is that going to change at all, or is that relatively going to stay the same?
That's going to stay the same. I think consistency is key there. They have a really good formula figured out through, like I said, it feels like a newer company in the United States, but it's really been going on for quite a while in Australia. And I think the other thing that maybe is less fun to talk about in an interview, but it's really important, is they put a major emphasis. They're really putting a lot of sweat equity and literal equity into developing the technology platforms behind what they do in order to really help lend some sophistication to the gyms. And I'm sure you guys have been around this game. I know you guys have been around this game a long time and have been privy to some of the struggles that these smaller martial arts gyms have. Not the extreme coutures necessarily, not the syndicates, but the smaller gyms that have a lot of good stuff going on, but they're generally run by someone who's really passionate about martial arts, not someone who's passionate about business, not someone who enjoys taking everyone's credit card every month, And so what Wimp to Warrior has done, in addition to create this life-changing fitness program, they're creating a business-changing platform to help these smaller gyms be more financially successful. And really the end goal for all of it, whether you're talking from the perspective of a gym or you're talking the perspective of an individual, the goal of Wimp to Warrior is to get more people training mixed martial arts, or martial arts in general, and to make mixed martial arts more accessible to the everyday person. Because I think a lot of people have a curiosity about MMA. They see it and they think, I wonder if I could do that. And often, I think in particular for women, it's always like, oh gosh, I could never do that. I get that all the time. Like, oh gosh, I could never do what you do. I could never hit anybody or get hit. And the whole way that this program is designed takes the fear out of it and creates a very structured program to allow the everyday person, to feel accessible to MMA. And I think back when I would go to join a new gym, and honestly today to some degree, especially if you join a real fight gym, there's kind of like a hazing process. There's a weeding out process that's like, okay, you're here, cool, yeah, we'll see what you can take, we'll see how long you last. And with Wimp to Warrior, that's not the purpose, because from the outset that these are, like I said, everyday people, weekend warrior type people who want to test themselves. They're not here to become the next UFC champ. Now, what's crazy is you might get, some incredible UFC fighters out of this program. I'll be fascinated to see if years from now, someone emerges as, a fantastic UFC fighter that started out as a Wimp to Warrior. But really the goal of the program is to make MMA accessible to everyone and take that fear out, take that gym hazing process out of it. So they know what they're signing up for. They know what the program looks like. They know what they're going to be taught. And they know at the end of it, they're really going to be able to put their skills to the test in a safe but realistic environment against someone else who has been through the program. So it's the way that they designed it. They put a lot of forethought into it. And I'm so pumped to be involved.
I have two more questions. One is a stupid question. And
I
the
love
other
stupid
one
questions.
is kind of like a personal question.
Okay, I love personal questions too.
Okay, if you don't like this, you can beat the crap out of me next time you see me. But I was just thinking about something. You once shared that your husband helped create that device for racing. I think it's called the Hans device, right?
Yep.
That's something, no matter how long you live in life, like obviously different race car drivers come and go, and they're all, a lot of them are great, but everybody's going to remember that, right? Like it's leaving your mark in that industry. For yourself, do you guys ever sit down and talk as a family because of the work that you do in mixed martial arts? And when you came around, you've actually done stuff that a lot of people could say, I decided to do this career because of Laura Sanko, or I decided to fight because I saw Laura Sanko could do it. Those type of things. As a family, do you guys ever talk? And is there ever like a little bit of a rivalry? Like you did this, I did that.
There's definitely no rivalry. And I wouldn't even necessarily say it's been like a conversation. That's not true. I've talked about these things with my husband, but maybe not in the same context that you're kind of putting out there. It's more of a conversation I have with myself, to be honest with you, because with the amount of things that I do and the way that I have to do them, I'm gone a lot, and I'm gone more than I would like to be honest with you. But part of what keeps me incredibly passionate and motivated about all of the things that I do is exactly what you just described. And I've probably only been within the last year that I've started to feel like, and to be honest with you, it's almost difficult for me to say it. I mean, you said it better than I did, because it feels ridiculous to me to say like, oh, I'm going to leave this legacy. I did all these amazing things. I haven't really done that amazing yet. I don't know. I hope I can. That's definitely my goal. I want to be, when I'm done being in this, I'll never be done with MMA, but when I'm done living this sport day in, day out, I do hope that I may have eased a path for other women to do similar things, whether it be fighting, whether it be joining a program like Wimp to Warrior, or whether it be feeling confident to do broadcasting work in a sport that's, very male dominated. If I can, weed whack that path a little bit. I don't think I've shattered any ceilings by any means yet. Maybe one day I can, but clearing that path even a little bit does mean a lot to me, because the sport means a lot to me. And as the older I've gotten, I think the more, this sounds kind of weird to say, the older I've gotten, the more it means a lot to me to uplift other women in this sport, because I was having this argument actually with my teammates when we were in Houston. Gina Mazzani and I were down there, and we were kind of arguing back and forth with James Krause and Tim Elliott about the ways in which it's difficult to be a woman in MMA. And in some ways, and we admitted this, in some ways it is 10 times easier to be a woman in MMA, in terms of like, it's easier to get into UFC. You don't have to have as many fights. There's an argument to be made that you don't have to be as technically proficient everywhere. It's easier to get an Instagram following. All of those things are true. But what Gina and I were attempting to communicate, and the thing that I would like to someday be able to say I helped to make a difference in, is the journey before you have your first fight, and the journey while you're an amateur, and the journey while you're on a regional scene. Back when I was doing it, that was the hard part of being a woman in MMA. Walking into a gym, being accepted in a gym, finding fights, taking the hazing from your male counterparts, not being exploited by promoters into like, hey, maybe don't wear a shirt when you fight. Hey, how low cut is your sports bra? Like that's the type of stuff that I ran into early in my fight career. And I think a lot of those things are changing. I definitely can feel that. You know, women walk into gyms now and it's not like, what are you doing here? They see that they can succeed in the UFC. So it changes the perception at grassroots level. So that's a very long-winded answer. All of that to say, if the things that I accomplished, whether as a broadcaster, or as a representative of Wimp to Warrior, or even in the limited fight career that I had, if those things can help ease the path, ease that journey into the sport, then that I've accomplished everything I set out to do.
That was such a nice and eloquent answer that I don't know that I can transition to the stupid question now.
No, do. You have to. You can't just say it and then not ask it.
All right. George and I were arguing about this the other day, but I think we ended up on the same page. You know the earbuds?
Yes.
If one of them fell in the toilet, it's donezo, right? Or can it be rescued if you get in there quick enough?
Well, it depends on if number 1 or number 2 is in the toilet. Entirely.
Really?
If it's just pee, I'm going in after it for sure. And honestly, if the other is nice and firm and intact,
yeah,
and the earbud did not make contact with it, and it's like maybe on the other side of the toilet, and mere seconds have passed, then yeah, I'm going in after it. I'm going to clean it thoroughly. I'm going to clean my hands thoroughly. But yeah, these are important.
3-second rule?
How many did you say?
3-second rule?
Yeah, I think 3 is probably appropriate. Yeah, not much more than that.
All right. We have a friend that
I don't have a lot of money, but if that ever happens, just flush it. Let us know, and we'll PayPal you the money, please. Yeah, I don't want to know that you did that. You know, even if it cost me my steaks for that week or whatever, I don't want to know that happened. So
how do you know? How do you know these didn't come out of the toilet? You don't.
Number 1, okay, but yeah, once these guys started going number 2, I think it's just a flush at that point. Maybe the phone, because the phone you gotta, you know,
that's even worse.
But now they have the cloud and all that. I think I might just go to the local store and just
You would not. First of all, if you flush your phone, it's gonna F up your toilet. So then you've got a giant plumbing bill. You would for sure. Don't lie to me. You would go after the phone.
I wouldn't flush the phone. But
you can't
yeah,
flush the phone, and you don't have time. You don't have time to go downstairs and find your giant yellow rubber gloves. You're going in after the phone, and don't act like you wouldn't.
This get flipped on me. It was a question for you. All right, good job, Guz. Way to make me turn crimson. Back to LFA. How have you enjoyed the 3-man? Well, just the booth in general. But I know you've done 2-man, 3-man. What can you compare of the 2?
I love it. I absolutely love it. First of all, and I'll tell you, man, that first LFA was so nerve-wracking for a variety of reasons, and it's the longest story that I can't get into, or wouldn't have time to get into. I shouldn't say I can't get into it, but I was nervous. It was very last minute, very, very last minute, and I was so excited to do it. But there's a huge part of me that thought, okay, Invicta's been great. My reception doing commentary Invicta has been fantastic. But Invicta fans are women's MMA fans, and they're a different fan base than the LFA fans are, because the LFA fans are like a slightly more, you know, ingrained version of the UFC fans. And I thought, wow, this is really going to be interesting, because in Invicta, I can do no wrong. You know, I came up through there. They are used to having a woman call the fights, and Julie Kedzie, she's been doing it from the very beginning and crushing it along the way. So she paved the path for me. So here I go to this other organization where they've never had a woman calling fights, and they're used to Pat Miletich, a legend of the game, being the voice of the fights. You know, I was scared to death that people were going to hate it. But I was willing to kind of put myself out there, because I knew that I could do a good job communicating the action that I was seeing. And I knew I could bring a fresh perspective to calling live action. And that's exactly what happened. And Alan Joban was the perfect partner for me to do that with. I think we did 3 in a row together while they were making the adjustments of not having Pat on board anymore. And then since then, being able to call fights with, Rafael Lovato Jr. is amazing. And coming up in June, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say who I'm calling with, but it's going to be a very, I don't think I'm allowed. I don't think I'm allowed. I don't want to get in trouble. But it's a very familiar face, a very familiar UFC face. Another, I would argue, legend of the sport, and I can't wait to be calling fights alongside him. So honestly, part of me is like, A, I'm fulfilling my dream, and B, like I get to know all of these guys that I've maybe done interviews with, but haven't really had time to like be around. And that's part of the fun for me, because like the fan in me is like, oh, I'm calling fights with.
Got it. All right. Well, yeah. I should have said 3-person booth, by the way. I'm still adjusting, and there's a lot of you that are doing quality work. There's Juliana Pena at Combate. Yeah. I've seen Jessica Penne with my man John Morgan over at CFFC. Of course, Misha's done it not only with one, but with Invicta. Yourself, Julie Kedzie, even Kathy Long. I got to give her a shout out. When I tuned into UFC 1, that was her, and yep. I don't know if I'm leaving any out. Feel free to chime in if I am. But those are the ones that come to mind that are just, killing it out there. Okay.
I was just going to say, who has really been doing this for the longest time at the highest level is Ana Hisa. She's Brazilian, and I didn't even realize this, but she's been calling UFC fights for years in Brazil through I'm going to get this wrong, but I believe through Combate. And like when I do Contender Series, she's also my voice. So I remember she came up to me at a show one time, and I think it was Vivi Rodriguez was like introducing us, and she's like, Ana is you in Brazil. And I thought she meant like she was a reporter. And she's like, no. When you talk, she says what you say in Portuguese. And then I immediately thought, oh my gosh, this poor woman is trying to like it's trying to repeat sometimes on Contender Series, I get so far ahead of myself and I like say the most ridiculous things. So I was immediately like, oh my gosh, this poor woman has quite the job if she's trying to like, repeat everything that comes out of my mouth. But yeah, she's been a pioneer as well. So yes, there are definitely others, and it's awesome to see more.
Laura, I know you got to go. I just want to ask you one quick one. It's controversial, but you touched on it and it made me think about it. So I think the question is appropriate. You talked about how it may be tricky or it may just not be able to happen where, because you're UFC Fight Pass and now Invicta's with Access TV, they're just different properties and there's different talent that works with different properties. Is that kind of like what's happening? Why GSP maybe can't go to Triller? The box De La Hoya. I've thought maybe it has to do because Dana White doesn't like De La Hoya, but could it be that they just don't want one of their major stars? And no disrespect to Ben Askren, he wasn't in the UFC like GSP was. They just don't want mixed talent like that. Is that maybe part of the answer, you think?
It could be. I don't know that I even have the pay grade to give you a legitimate answer other than my own personal opinion. And that is that, it could be a part of it. And I understand their perspective on it. I think and we're talking sheer business here, right? When you spend millions and millions of dollars helping build who a person is in society's eyes, in the MMA community's eyes, there's a certain amount, I think, of like, wait a second, we helped you do this, and now you're going to take what we helped you build and bring it right to a competitor on our doorstep. I don't know that they see Triller as a real competitor, but I don't know is the real answer. I don't have enough insight into his contract and what that looks like at this stage of his career to really have a valid opinion on that.
I got you. All right.
Yeah.
They pinned my comment on Junkie when they were talking about it, and I woke up to so many notifications. So I've been brawling with people a little bit online, which I don't mind doing. That's my little version of Wimp to Warrior. But I want to dive a little bit more into this. I think all I was doing was agreeing with Anderson Silva, honestly, but I got hammered with it. But anyway, listen, thanks so much for the time today. We talked about a lot. Congrats on everything you're a part of, because everything you're a part of is going to do better. You know what I mean? So
I appreciate that.
You're a true professional and you kick butt, and we're happy for all your success.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you always. And thank you for helping boost me up. Appreciate it.
Awesome.